Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. Yes, why do prints tend to fade so much faster when you use third-party inks, specifically Pro 100 and third-party dye inks, regardless where you get them from? It's the nature of the beast. Dye inks will fade much faster than pigment-based inks. We'll talk about both of these. Now, if you recall, I recently loaded PC 42 SE or Signature Edition inks from Precision Colors on my Pro 100, and even though I had a little bit of doubt on their performance, I immediately fell in love with them. The reason being is that I was able to print strictly with the driver and get amazing results, even a little bit better than I was getting with OEM ink printing with the driver as well. Now, this does not include any custom profiling I may have done in the future. We're talking simply about printing with the driver or printing with the Canon, say for instance, in this case, ProLuster OEM profile. Now, fading. What causes fading? Many things cause fading, okay? Not just the inks, but also the paper and the conditions around your house, a level of light and pollution, okay? And you might say, well, my house is not polluted. Well, we're breathing the air that is around our community, and it may contain pollutants. It may contain ozone. And ozone is a very effective oxidant of dye inks because they are organic. The ones that you buy that are third party are not synthetic inks. They are organic and they will oxidize and fade quickly. So what can you do? Well, you can do many things. Use better paper. Okay, do not use resin-coated paper with lots of optical brightening agents. All that does is give you the illusion of a super bright reflective print. Okay, but really what it is doing is allowing those already fugitive inks, meaning that they fade many fold faster or quicker than OEM, to fade quicker than OEM. All right, so I'm going to show you some examples. On the day of Memorial Day, which I believe was May 28th, I went ahead and printed OEM as well as PC 42 SE renditions of the so-called perfect image, which is the standard image that I use all the time. Over here we have OEM, over here we have PC. And I have this taped together, so bear with me here. This was hanging upstairs on my landing, facing a big window, receiving light. I switched the prints every once in a while. I just flip them upside down so that the whole array gets, a relatively even amount of light. We are on about just under 3 months of exposure. This is OEM, this is PC, and so far so good. I don't see a drastic change. Let's put it this way in case the lighting is affecting the way this looks. Again, I'll flip them this way because we have very uneven lighting here. I wish I had a perfect wall to do this against. Anyway, we're looking for tonality changes in those gray areas because ink does not usually fade linearly. It will fade quicker with black and yellow, and then that will kind of turn the whole image a weird sepia tone, okay? That's what will happen. So what do I need to do? Well, what if OEM is also fading? Because we're using ProLuster paper, RC coated, high level of OBAs. Again, probably the worst choice to do a longevity test. Okay, so this could be fading at the same rate as this. It could be, who knows? So I decided to quickly print one. 5 minutes ago, I printed this. Again, it's an equivalent print. I used the OEM ProLuster profile. So this is brand spanking new. I see a slight difference between the two. Even this one looks a little bit lighter. Okay, so Again, what are we showing here? That in 3 months almost, these two kind of look alike, but the fresh print looks a little bit denser. Okay, we'll see what happens 6 months, 9 months, a year later. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that RC coated papers with high level of OBAs really is not the best choice for you to use, even with OEM ink. Okay, and they have told you this repeatedly, but people just don't listen. I know I don't. So, I keep using that paper. I have a lot of it left still. It was being given away practically for free. I wonder why. So what can you do? What can you do if you still have, say, a huge supply of this paper? Well, you can protect that print. Why would you want to do that? Think about this. We'll talk about this particular paper, and we'll talk about a much higher end paper. And I'll give you an example right now. AAAARGH Imaging Group did a test on this premium printer, not that $100 after rebate printer. This premium printer right here, which uses some of the best pigment ink in the biz. They printed samples on ProLuster and then 2 other brands of paper, not Canon, but not against Canon, nothing against Canon, but they use a non-RC type paper, more like a fine art, 100% rag, 100% cotton type paper. And again, no OBAs and none of that resin coating, okay? And the results were dramatic. What is actually happening here? Well, you have dye molecules dissolve in a clear base, okay? Don't worry about the formulation, but it's just dye, ink, no particles of any sort. On paper, ProLuster, that has a microporous surface. The base of the paper, before it is coated with this microporous surface, is coated on either surface with resin so that it is practically waterproof. That allows that paper to not absorb any kind of moisture from the liquid base of the ink. So when it comes out of the printer, that paper is practically dry to the touch. The microporous surface allows the dye ink to penetrate or pigment ink to penetrate. And then the liquid base that needs to evaporate can readily leave that surface, okay, because of those microporous coating conditions. Now, the other papers, the so-called fine art papers, do not have that type of coating. When the wet ink hits the surface, it penetrates by diffusion. It penetrates because it starts to partially dissolve the coating slightly. And then once that coating dries, that ink is pretty much encapsulated within that coating. And there's very little chance, or a lot less chances, for ozone to enter. Ozone can enter like you left the door open, this type of coating, okay? The microporous coating. What will that do? It will oxidize your ink, and that causes it to fade. If ozone cannot enter, or has a very difficult time to enter that coating, it cannot oxidize your inks, okay? Eventually it will, but not as quickly as anything on a resin-coated microporous surface type paper, okay? We love those papers because they're instantly dry, okay? Now, what can you do? So what can I do? I got tons of ProLuster, and I don't want to spend a fortune. I want to use precision color inks on my Pro 100. Well, then I have to invest on some sort of protection scheme. And that basically is spraying my prints. Because the only thing you really need to do to protect this, especially if you're going to mount them on Gator board and put them on your wall, not under glass, not under any glazing, is to spray the surface. That will seal those pores and that will encapsulate the ink. Okay, and gases cannot penetrate that layer of coating that you applied very easily. Okay, so that print will all of a sudden become maybe 10 times longer lasting than an untreated one. All right, now, like I showed you, 3 months almost. Very little difference between the prints. We'll see in a year. I'm sure I will see a difference in the density. They will fade. They are going to fade, absolutely. But had I coated those prints, and I did a long test many, many years ago, where I did do a series of prints like that, and I did coat some with several sprays that are available, and they did not fade within 1 year. I went ahead and printed a new print, compared it to the year-long treated print, and saw no visual fading. I also then put it next to the one that I held in dark storage, basically just in a box. So that kind of kept air from getting in as well, but not so much. And that did not show any fading either. Okay? So again, think very hard about, oh, I'm going to use those new inks because they work so well and they are such a good match to OEM color-wise. And of course, they're going to also match longevity. No, they're not. Of course not. Okay, you would have to pay the money that you normally pay for OEM to achieve that level of longevity. You're just not going to get it with third-party dye inks or even third-party pigment inks. They just will not have that level of longevity. It's the nature of the beast, as they say. So what else can you do? Well, spray your prints, and please refrain from mounting them bare. I know that's the modern look now. Consider putting them under glass. I have a frame picture of Nathan. I should just get it and show you. What is this? I think this is San Gabriel, original 1.0, printed on dye inks, Pro 100, the old ones. These are the old ones right here. Not a bit of fading. I mean, I know what this print originally looked like, believe me. Again, good paper, frame under glass. They'll last probably longer than you want that print to last anyway. It's as simple as that. Protect your prints, and also use a paper that will by itself enhance longevity because of its properties, meaning no RC, okay, no microporous surface, 100% rag, 100% fiber type papers. Those will always perform better as far as longevity goes. Okay. Oh, you don't like the fact that they don't have that pop of a luster or glossy paper? Well, too bad. That's what you get. Okay, that's what you get. A non-reflective surface like that is not going to have the so-called pop that a glossy print. But a glossy print will be resin coated, will have a microporous surface, and will indeed reduce the longevity characteristics of that print otherwise. Now, what about Canon Glossy Platinum? That I'm not sure whether that paper has the same type level of OBAs as the Pro Luster or the regular glossy paper that they sell. Again, it's all about those two factors, RC coating and OBA. Okay, OBAs will fade anyway by themselves. They just basically burn out when they get exposed to UV light with time. And so many factors about this fading problem. Oh, I'm surprised that in 2 months my prints have faded. Well, even if you take, give you an example real quick before I say goodbye. Even if you just cover the edge accidentally of a print and you come back a month later and you unveil it, oh my gosh, that's faded. Of course it did. It got exposed to air. It got exposed to ozone. And the covered portion was more or less protected from exposure to ozone. Simple as that. So, yeah, you will have a nice protected area and an area where it faded, especially, and again, it all depends where you live. It all depends on your air quality. So, again, why take a chance? Do everything you can do to protect your prints. Spray them front and back if you must, especially with the rag type papers, unless you're using OEM. Okay, spray the front, seal that, spray the back, seal that as well, because fiber-based papers do not have that protective coating of resin. Okay, so you need to apply something to protect the surfaces of that print from the ravages of ozone, and that's what literally destroys a dye-based print. Okay, I hope that wasn't too discouraging. Accept the fact that when you switch over to a dye ink set, regardless of how good it performs compared to OEM as far as color rendition, you have to consider the fact that longevity is pretty much gone. Okay? I don't want to be that blunt, but it is. You have to then do things to enhance, to at least allow that print to last as long as it can possibly last. You need to help it. No one's going to want to buy an ink set that has huge level of longevity. What? Oh, I forgot to add, but color rendition is horrible. You see, no one will want an ink set that will last forever, but the color rendition is horrible. What you can do, however, is buy ink that will provide you near perfect match to OEM. It's just that none of these ink sets can give you the longevity of OEM ink. For everyone who complains about the price, that's how it is. And you know me, I am blunt and I say it like it is. All right, that is it. The next video that I'm going to do is going to be really interesting because I've been accused of having this bias toward Canon printers. Well, it's not that I'm biased toward Canon printers against, for instance, Epson. There's a reason for that, and I will discuss that in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. And as always, hit that bell to be notified of any new content. Oh, gosh, I almost forgot, and I should have said that at the beginning. If you click away now, you will miss this announcement. Last night, we hit 25,000 subscribers. Yay! Thank you so much, everybody, for your support. Keep watching, keep sharing, keep liking. Happy printing, everybody. Bye-bye.